Van Gogh did not paint Starry Night by looking at the sky. He painted it from memory. And that one fact changes everything. Because when you paint from memory, you are not painting what you see. You are painting what stayed with you, what haunted you, what followed you even when you closed your eyes. Starry Night is not a window. It is a confession. Most people stand in front of it and think they're looking at the night, but what they're really looking at is a mind trying to survive itself. And maybe that's why it feels so familiar, not because you've seen that sky before, but because you've felt it. In 1889, Vincent van Gogh was not free. He was living inside the walls of a mental hospital in Saint-Rémy in the south of France, not because he wanted to be there, but because his mind had become too dangerous for his own body. He had suffered a breakdown, a storm inside him that he could not turn off. The famous story of his ear is not really about the ear. It's about a man who felt too much, too loudly, too constantly in a world that had no language for that kind of pain. At the asylum, Vincent was allowed to paint during the day, but at night he could not go outside. The doors were locked, the windows were barred. So when he painted the night sky, he wasn't copying it, he was remembering it. And memory is never neutral. Memory is shaped by emotion, by fear, by longing, by hope, by loneliness. When you remember something, you don't remember the facts, you remember how it felt. That is the night Vincent painted. Not the real one, the emotional one. Look at the sky in Starry Night. It doesn't sit still, it doesn't behave, it doesn't rest. It moves like a living thing. The stars don't sparkle, they pulse, they burn, they vibrate. The moon isn't calm, it's swollen with energy, like it's holding too much light inside itself. And the sky is the real subject. It swirls, it coils, it twists around itself like a mind that cannot stop thinking. That is not realism, that is psychology. When Vincent painted those spirals, he wasn't saying, "This is what the sky looks like." He was saying, "This is what my head feels like." The village below is quiet, still, asleep. The houses are dark. The church stands tall but silent. Nothing down there is moving. Everything moving is in the sky. That's not an accident. That's a mind that cannot rest, looking down at a world that can. The thick paint, the impasto, is not decorative, it's desperate. He used his brush the way some people use their voice when they're about to cry. Too much pressure, too much urgency. Each stroke is like a heartbeat, fast, heavy, uneven. Vincent wasn't painting objects, he was painting sensations. The painting isn't about stars, it's about what it feels like to be awake inside yourself when the rest of the world is asleep. People often call Starry Night a landscape, but it isn't. It's a psychological portrait, not of Vincent's face, but of his inner weather. The sky is his anxiety. The movement is his racing thoughts. His glowing stars are his hope, too bright, too intense, too fragile. And the village? The village is the life he could see but not reach. Safe, quiet, ordinary. The cypress tree, tall, dark, rising into the sky, stands between the village and the stars. Cypress trees were symbols of death in Vincent's time. So what does that mean? It means the painting isn't just about beauty, it's about distance. Distance between the calm world and the storm inside him.
distance between wanting peace and not knowing how to get there. Vincent once wrote that the night was more alive and more richly colored than the day. That tells you everything. For him, darkness wasn't empty, it was loud. And that's something people who struggle inside understand. Sometimes your worst moments aren't when things go wrong, they're when things go quiet and you're left alone with your thoughts. Starry night is what that feels like. Not silence, not rest, but motion without direction. Van Gogh was not showing the world as it is, he was showing the world as he experienced it. He was saying, this is what it feels like to be alive in my head. And maybe that's why Starry Night still speaks to us. Because even now, more than 100 years later, people stand in front of it and feel something shift inside them. Not because they recognize the village, but because they recognize the feeling. The feeling of being awake when everything else seems asleep. The feeling of thinking too much. The feeling of wanting peace, but only finding motion. Vincent didn't paint the night sky. He painted what it feels like to be human when your mind won't turn off. And maybe, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by your own thoughts, if you've ever stared at the ceiling at night with too many questions and not enough answers, then you've already been inside this painting. Starry Night isn't famous because it's beautiful. It's famous because it's honest. It doesn't pretend that the mind is calm. It shows that sometimes being alive feels like standing under a sky that won't stop moving. And if that resonates with you, if you've ever felt like your inner world was louder than the outer one, then you're not alone. And Vincent knew that before anyone had words for it. If this spoke to you, follow Art Origins, not just to learn about art, but to understand what it means to feel deeply in a world that often doesn't. Because sometimes the most powerful paintings aren't the ones that show us the world, they're the ones that show us ourselves.